famous Americans. We're going to be reviewing that so you have more knowledge and review for when you do your choice boards. Just a refresher, this is Virginia SOL 2.4, and it asks that you will describe the contributions of selected individuals that changed the lives of Americans. Now, what that means is that you can talk about our famous Americans and talk about why they're important and how they helped us. So we're going to do that a little bit at the end after we review. Our first famous American that we're going to review is Christopher Columbus, who lived from 1451 to 1506. Now, if you remember, Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492. He was looking for a way to get to India because originally they had to go all the way around and go down around Africa and up around, and it was really dangerous. So he thought, why can't we just cut across the other side? And decided to sail across the Atlantic Ocean and accidentally ran into the Americas instead of India. He didn't know that at the time, but it helped him lead the way for European exploration and colonization of America. So he is credited with starting the Americas and discovering America. Next, we're going to talk about Benjamin Franklin. He lived 1706 to 1790. And he was the one that proved that electricity was enlightening when he did his key experiment. Remember, don't try that at home. It's not safe. The Benjamin Franklin thing. He already discovered it. You don't need to go try it. But he discovered this because he was a scientist and inventor. But he also started the first library and the first fire department in America. And remember, he was one of the founding fathers of the United States. So he was really important to establishing the Declaration of Independence and creating America as it is today. Our next famous American is Abraham Lincoln. Good old Abe Lincoln was the 16th President of the United States, but you knew that. He is also on the penny. You also knew that. He lived from 1809 to 1865 and was president 1861 to 1865. Abraham Lincoln is the one who wrote the Emancipation Proclamation, which helped free the slaves. He was president during the Civil War. So there was a lot of conflict between the North and the South, and the people who felt like they needed slaves and the people who wanted the slaves to be free. Now, John Wilkes Booth was one of the opposers of Abraham Lincoln and was the one that killed Abraham Lincoln in 1865. Next is George Washington Carver. Now, this guy's my favorite because his stuff involves food. So, George Washington Carver was born in the 1860s, not exactly sure when, and then died in 1943. George Washington Carver, not George Washington, George Washington Carver, was the African-American scientist, inventor, and teacher. Just like Benjamin Franklin, he was a scientist and inventor, but George Washington Carver developed hundreds of uses for peanuts and sweet potatoes and soybeans. So, like peanut butter, but he also figured out medicines and other types of food and all these different things that you could do with these different types of food. So, he was pretty cool. Our next famous American to review, Helen Keller. Also really cool. Also really love her. She was born in 1880 and died in 1968. Helen Keller was the one that was blind and deaf, but she had Anne Sullivan to help teach her how to read write, speak, work hard, and because she was able to learn those things, and because she persevered and overcame her disabilities, she was able to help others who had disabilities, specifically those who were blind and deaf, but she also worked to help people with other disabilities as well. But she really paved a foundation for those who were blind and deaf. Thurgood Marshall. Thurgood Marshall was a lawyer during the Civil Rights Movement. He was born in 1908 and 1990 and died in 1993. So what that means is we often think of the Civil Rights Movement being a long time ago because to you guys it seems like it was. But let me tell you something. He died only 3 years before I was born. So that means that it really wasn't that long ago. So Thurgood Marshall defended people during that time who didn't have rights. He ended up becoming the first African American justice or judge of the Supreme Court. So he really paved the way for African Americans in the Supreme Court. Rosa Parks, another one of my favorite famous Americans. And if I remember correctly from my students, a lot of your favorites too. Rosa Parks was born in 1913 and died in 2005. So that was even less time ago than Thurgood Marshall. African American women and men had to sit in the back of the bus at that time. But Rosa Parks didn't give up her seat when she was asked to move for a white man. So because of this and her other actions in the civil rights movement, she helped to bring about a lot of changes and worked really hard so that all people could have civil rights and equal rights. So that you, me, Miss Rebuck, all of your classmates, so that all of us could have the same rights. Rosa Parks was known as the First Lady of Civil Rights because of all of the things that she did to help the civil rights movement. Then there's Jackie Robinson. Jackie Robinson was a famous American baseball player. He was born in 1919 and died in 1972. Remember, Jackie Robinson was the first African American to play in the Major League Baseball. So he helped bring around opportunities for other African Americans, not only just in baseball, but in general, just for them to be more involved in sports. Because initially they were segregated, and a lot of them weren't able to play because of their race. So Jackie Robinson really helped with that portion of equal rights movements. And Cesar Chavez. Cesar Chavez was the one who helped farm workers and led peaceful movements to better the working conditions for farm workers. He was a Mexican-American leader who co-founded with another person the National Farm Workers Association, which to this day helps farm workers. And one of the most well-known of our famous Americans that you all talk about all of the time, Martin Luther King Jr. He was born in 1929 and died in 1968. He was an African American minister who worked really hard in the civil rights movement so that, again, we would all have equal rights. He and Rosa Parks fought really hard for us to all have equal rights. And they led peaceful marches, and he gave peaceful speeches, and they had peaceful movements. So he also is well known for writing the I Have a Dream speech. Um, if you get a chance, that'd be a really cool thing for you to listen to. It is really long, so you don't have to listen to all of it, but I think some of you have heard part of it um, already. Now, I told you that at the end of this, we were going to talk about how we talk about famous Americans and show what we know. With that in mind, I'm going to give you an example. And I'm hoping that this example will help you with some of the activities on your choice boards for this week. Because there's a couple where you write questions, you write interviews, you make quizzes, and we really want you to show what you know. So, for example, my favorite famous American is George Washington Carver because he did so much with just a few little foods. He took his science knowledge and being a scientist, and he decided that, hey, I am going to make these inventions, and I'm going to make these foods, and I'm going to make these medicines. And he found all sorts of things to do with peanuts and soybeans and sweet potatoes. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know how to do a lot with soybeans and peanuts and sweet potatoes. So I'm really impressed that he used his scientific knowledge to do that. So I just wanted to close this out with we really miss you guys. We really love you guys. We hope that you are enjoying your time at home. Um, we're hoping that these videos help you to review and help you to continue to be ready for third grade. Um, Even though we're not learning new things, it's important that we keep working really hard, keep reading, keep learning. Love you guys.